Hello, one and all. Jasper here, and I am joined by DJ Fella, a good friend of mine who I've known for most of my life. Now, this podcast we're going to be talking about A Dance of Dragons, or as I like to call it, Hot D. Now, I myself am a bit of a book connoisseur, whereas DJ Fella is a bit more of a show pleb, we like to call them. Would you like to introduce yourself, DJ Fella?
Hello, I'm DJ Fella. I have not read the books. Can we go back to Hot D real quick? What is Hot D?
That's the abbreviation for House of the
Oh,
Dragon.
that's the abbreviation. Okay, I that's pretty sexy. Hot D. I like that.
From what I've heard, I thought I was clever and I came up with that on my own. From what I heard, George R. R. Martin has also called it Hot D, so I think I'm onto something here.
Yeah, definitely seems like it. You're definitely getting closer to the greatness.
All right. So, before we really delve into House of the Dragon, I think it wouldn't be too far to say if we kind of gave our general thoughts of maybe Game of Thrones, the original series, and kind of our expectations with House of the Dragon. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good.
So, for me, I started Game of Thrones when season 5 was wrapping up. That was right when they kind of started running out of book material. And I really enjoyed it. I loved a lot of it. I mean, I was like a teenager at that time and I was pulled in by the boobs and the violence, but I stayed for the political intrigue and characters. It really put hair on my chest. Like most people,
Mm-hmm.
once I caught up with the show, I wanted a bit more, so of course I went into the books, and I immensely enjoyed the books. But what was interesting, and maybe this is anchoring bias, there were several things that the show did that I greatly preferred over the books. Not even if you exclude the extra scenes, Peter Baelish and Varys having their scenes that never appeared in the books at all, but also just general changes. Arya and Tywin, while she was serving as his cupbearer, I really enjoyed those scenes, though I'll admit they don't quite make as much sense as the original. But entertainment-wise, I greatly prefer that. Then once the rest of the season started coming out, I was deeply turned off about the entire series. I was one of the few people who after I started to realize that the drop of quality was around the end of season 4, beginning of season 5. And so I was ahead of the game when season 8 rolled around, and people were surprised. I was just like, nah, it's been shit for 4 years at this point.
Yeah.
So because of that, and it's not fair, but I was definitely going into House of the Dragon very skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
It had some positives. For starters, it has a finished story. It has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an end. So we don't have to worry about the writers going too crazy with it. At the same time, though, House of the Dragon is a very much more vague story. It's not even calling it a story is a bit inaccurate. It's more of a history book. It talks about the characters and events, and the whole kind of interesting about it is specifically the Dance of the Dragons, which House of the Dragons will be going into. It's very vague in a lot of places with different sources, like, oh, this probably happened, or it could have been this, or maybe this person was responsible. So it's got a lot of that mystery that the show obviously can't really have, because the show is going to be a much more, I'm not going to say factual, but less up to interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, but that was just my general thought process. I was very skeptical, expecting the worst, hoping for the best along those lines. Some of the casting choices came out that I wasn't a huge fan about. Other kind of news outlets along those lines kind of going into it. So, yeah, kept it all pretty low. But I think after the first episode, I've lightened up a little bit. But anyways, I've talked enough. Now it's your turn.
Yeah, so I probably picked up on the decline of the original TV show a little bit later than you did. All I can say for sure is that I remember not being thrilled to watch the show anymore when season 7 started. Like that was about the time where I was not considering myself so much of a Game of Thrones fan anymore, and I I still watched all the way through season 8 because I guess I'm a masochist. But I also I wouldn't even say I was like skeptical or cautiously optimistic or anything. I was straight up had no expectations for House of the Dragon. Before you got in touch with me about doing this kind of podcast thing, I was not planning on even watching the show. So I my expectations were pretty bottomed out going in, and I will say it. I was pleasantly surprised by the first episode.
Well, that's always good. That's like a glowing review at that point. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I mean, they passed my bar, which was pretty low, but they passed my bar.
Alrighty. So with that, do now you said that you are the more meticulous individual. You watched it a few times and you took notes and you have a lot to say on it. I'm definitely more of the fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy. I watched it several times and I wrote a script for a video that's going to be coming out hopefully today, maybe tomorrow, going into the differences between the source material and it. But do you want to kind of give your idea on the show as a whole, or like the episode as a whole, or do you want to just get down into the nitty gritty and go scene by scene?
Yeah, I could give a quick first impression.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, the show was started off much better than I expected. I was really happy with like the character writing early on. I feel like they did a good job of establishing all the major players. Even if they did do it with some pretty cliche lines, like when the princess says, "I'd rather serve as a knight and ride to battle in glory," when she's talking to her mother on the child bed.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's like I feel like the tomboy who wants to do what the boys do is like it's an old character trope, but in recent years it's just been played out ad nauseum. So I'm not necessarily saying that's bad, but I also don't love it.
Mm-hmm.
The world building, of course, is fantastic. The show basically just has to stick with what George has written, and the world building will be one of the best fantasy worlds that exists. So I'm not too concerned about that, and pretty happy with what the show's done so far. The plot so far, I think they've done a really good job of establishing, the major conflicts. They've set a few seeds for little twists, I guess, that could potentially happen in the future. I will say, pacing-wise, the episode felt a little fast compared to like early Game of Thrones, like the good seasons of Game of Thrones. It felt pacing-wise a little closer to some of the later seasons, I think, which I find a little bit concerning, but nothing damning about that. As far as book accuracy goes, I obviously don't have much of a clue. I think I've heard some things about this time period from watching your videos, but I couldn't say anything in particular. So that's my first impressions.
Yeah. So I can see what you mean, and I definitely have my thoughts on the whole kind of tomboy aspect of the character, but I think we can delve a bit more into that once we get to that particular scene, because I think I interpreted it a little bit differently from you. When it comes to the pacing of the episode, you are right. It is fast. And I think it is because House of the Dragon is a very different beast. Because I'm not going to go into spoiling too much, but you know how, well, eventually Viserys will have a son that has not been born yet. And he's going to be a very key player, if I'm assuming they're going with the pacing they are, by the end of the season. So that means that years and years may go by between each episode. And so it's definitely a much...
Okay.
Yeah. So it's... Because like Game of Thrones, it was slower, but you were with the characters over every step. Whereas because House of the Dragon was a bit more broad, years and years could go by between each of these particular events and whatnot. So I think that's kind of the difficulty of adapting this series. And personally, I think it is okay to kind of have some of the, and a lot of people were critical of Game of Thrones in its later seasons for like the time skips and whatnot. I personally wasn't.
Yeah.
I personally wasn't too critical of that because we kind of had already those bits and moments. It seemed like if they were to go into that, it would have been a bit more on the repetitive side, or something along those lines.
I mean, I don't know about the time skips, but the teleporting.
Yeah.
bugged
Oh,
me.
yeah.
I wasn't a fan of teleporting.
Yeah, Varys, in Dorne, and then he teleports to Essos or Slaver's Bay so he can travel back with Dany. It's just, yeah, that was a bit crazy. But, like, the general time skipping I was mostly okay with. Like, I think, Jon said that he was going to head over to Dragonstone. Then he does. I don't think that was incredibly bad, but there were definitely some ludicrous cases, like Dany flying from Dragonstone all the way to the Wall. That's some grade A bullshit right there.
Yeah, yeah. That's the example I was thinking of.
Alrighty. But I think with that all squared away, we can start going scene by scene. So it starts off, of course, in Harrenhal, and we get an incredibly large lore dump. So a lot of I feel like, I don't know about specifically in this case, but in general in stories, I feel like a lot of people have a distaste for epilogues like this, where it's just, shoveling all this kind of information, like here's the backstory you need. I'm sorry?
Prologues.
Yeah, prologues. So I feel like there's kind of just an in general kind of distaste for them. I personally don't mind them so long as it's kind of like just that very beginning. Just like give us enough so that we know what we're getting into and what's important along those lines. I honestly think that Game of Thrones would have been better if they had a bit of a prologue. Like if they went into a little bit of detail for Robert's Rebellion and the events that took place before Game of Thrones. Because when I was watching Game of Thrones, I was definitely lost a little bit about who was who, what was what. I remember some people saying that in the very first Game of Thrones episode, like the pilot that was never aired, the audience didn't know that Jaime and Cersei were brother and sister. And I didn't know that the first episode that we saw. Granted, I think that was because I wasn't paying that close attention. I was kind of like, looking up on my phone, and I was like, I wasn't sure if I was going to get into it. So that's probably more on me than the show itself. But I've got no real big issue with a more prologue start. I think it's very useful, especially because, the prologue's 2, maybe 3 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I hate an exposition dump as much as the next guy, but I think when exposition is done well, it's essential, right? Like you can't not expose throughout an entire series, especially one with as much lore as Game of Thrones has. So I think that they did a good job with the prologue of making it, it was a very dramatic scene on top of being super exposition heavy.
Yeah, and I think a prologue is also nice in the case of the only other way one can somewhat give information about the world is if characters talk about it. But when you have kind of conversations like that, it's a little hard to naturally do it. Now I think Game of Thrones did it incredibly well. I think you had Robert and Ned reminiscing about the past that gave a bit more detail to the whole situation of the world and the Targaryens and all that. And some other little bits, like Bran was being taught by the Maester about the houses, their sigils, and their mottos. And those were pretty good, but there were still always these little questions that you always had burning in your head that you wouldn't know unless you read the books or did your own research and risk getting spoiled or along those lines.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second. I gotta turn my AC off. Alright, I've returned. Don't worry, we can cut all that.
All right, so picking back up, the one line that stood out to me most during the prologue scene was when the king said, or when the narrator, I guess the princess is the one narrating, uh, says that the king knew the one thing that could tear down the house of the dragon was itself, which I found funny because wouldn't you say that pretty much the rebellion tore down the house of the dragon, like not itself at all?
Well, you have to think these are two very different situations. Like, because you're referencing
Yeah,
Robert's Rebellion, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So you're right. Obviously, by the end of it, it was the Baratheons and the other noble houses that took down the Targaryens. However, that arguably would have never happened if the dance, this upcoming, what this is building up to, goes up. Because currently, the Targaryens have like 10 or more dragons. And dragons are
I
the.
think the show said 10 at the start.
Yeah. I'm not quite. I don't know the numbers off the head, but I think that's accurate. I know that more will be coming eventually. But anyways, so yeah, pretty much no one can match that. So the Targaryens' only real enemy are Targaryens, because a human can only do so much against a fire-breathing beast. So it was because of the dance that resulted in, the dragons being pretty much wiped out. Then you have the noble houses that could eventually rise up and depose the Mad King Ares 170 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, I just I found the line funny because it's kind of the first taste of a little dramatic irony that we're going to be getting throughout the show, where like the characters obviously don't know what's going to happen in 200 years, but we do. So they'll say some stuff, and you'll be like, "Ha, what an idiot! You don't know what's going to happen in 200 years."
and in 200 years, it's not going to be a dragon; it's going to be a deer that kicks your ass.
Yeah.
All right. So I greatly enjoyed the Harrenhal scene as well, along with your lines. Couple of inaccuracies, but I won't go into detail about that. We'll save that for later. Is it just me though? But I wasn't a huge fan of Jaehaerys' costume. Do you remember it?
Yeah, I was just looking at it a second ago. I mean, he's wearing some robes for sure. What's wrong with it? What do you not like about it?
I don't know. It just feels like I swear I saw like some sort of king or queen of England wear something similar to that. It just doesn't give me quite that same kind of foreign fantasy vibes. But that's just literally me nitpicking. A lot of this stuff is just going to be nitpicking.
He kind of looks he looks a little popey.
Maybe that's it.
Like, yeah, I mean, maybe it's just because the robes are white and gold, but it looks a little popey to me.
Yeah. So now this isn't like a massive thing or along either lines, but I wasn't a huge fan of as the scene is changing from Harrenhal and it goes black and we see the text that tells us, this is a prequel. This happened 172 years before Daenerys Targaryen. I was just like,
Yeah.
why?
So the notes I wrote for the exposition text was fucking time skip forward with an exposition text that I'm not fucking reading. Thank God it gave me cliff notes.
Yeah, that's about right. Because the whole point is, if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, you already roughly know what's going on. Even if you haven't read the books, you have a pretty decent idea what's happening. And if you haven't watched the show or read the books, you don't know who the fuck Daenerys is. So 172 years before Daenerys? What? Like a
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. I think it's kind of nice to know exactly where we are on the timeline. Because if you've just watched the show, then you might understand this takes place before Game of Thrones, but you wouldn't know how far before exactly.
I guess, but I don't know. Like, imagine if Star Wars, when it first started up, it was just like, this takes place 30 years before Luke Skywalker was born, or something like that. It's like, I don't know, it's just like, feels like you're talking down to your audience at that point, because the fans already know, and new fans aren't going to give a shit.
I mean, that was my point with the thank God it gave me Cliff Notes. Was like, was that really necessary to remove everything except for 172 years before Daenerys Targaryen? Like that felt a little patronizing.
Yeah. But with that, the very next scene, of course, is the dragon flying around. And I gotta say, effects
Yeah.
wise, I don't have any massively strong complaints or anything along those lines.
I did just see online some people complaining about this first dragon scene looking a little weird. Looking at it now, it looks fine. The one thing that maybe could be a little off is there's no shadow on the clouds from the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. You could explain that way with that just being the angle we're looking at it on.
I'll be
And
honest.
then swooping over King's Landing with the Sept in the background, like that's pretty gorgeous right there.
Mm-hmm. We don't really see it very well, like in the flying, but it's clear when the dragon lands, and you can still see it while it's flying. But I like that they actually put a saddle on these dragons now, because
Yeah,
we put saddles on horses, and they're a lot easier to ride on. Imagine like holding on to like a dragon scales. Nah, fuck that. Get me a saddle.
yeah, yeah. Like, did you ever read the book Aragon?
Um, I watched the terrible movie that you hated.
Yeah, the movie was bad. Like, bad doesn't even begin to describe it. It's Avatar: The Last Airbender levels of adaptation. Um, but in the book, the first time Aragon ever rides his dragon, like he doesn't have a saddle, and the scales like chafe his thighs like bloody, and that's. I mean, I'd imagine that's what would happen. That seems pretty realistic.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, these are beasts that like arrows bounce off their scales.
Yeah,
So now when the dragon lands, we get a little bit of a better look at it. Obviously, it's a CG dragon, so meh. But what I am very happy for is that it definitely looks physically different from like Drogon, Viserys, and Rhaegal from the original from Game of Thrones, and that was like it's something I didn't
yeah. I
really
was planning.
go ahead.
I was planning on asking you about that. Like, are there different breeds of dragons? Because yeah, both this dragon and the dragon we see later on in the episode look very different from Game of Thrones.
So when it comes to like breeds of dragon, I don't think there's like any unique like breed per se. From what I understand, especially since like all the dragons here originate from like the three original ones, which I don't believe there was any massive difference between them aside from color of the scales and the size difference, with Balerion being the biggest and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's not four-legged dragons or Chinese dragons or Western dragons or basilisk dragons or anything along those lines. Though I think there are basilisks. They're just really small, very small, like probably bull size, maybe a bit bigger than that. Anyways, but yeah, as far as
I would not call bulls very small.
well, I would picture the basilisk to be a bit bigger, but who knows? With that said, I am not entirely aware. This is a good question. I'll have to look into this for next podcast. But yeah, I don't think there's like any particular different breed of dragon. I think like each dragon is almost its special snowflake. If there were more, like instead of 10 there were 1,000, or like back in the Doom of Old Valyria where there were a lot more, there might have been more kind of classes and groups of them. But as far as I'm aware, there's no obvious placement of each one.
Yeah, because I mean that's kind of what I was thinking. Is there's so few dragons that I mean they're basically all going to be crossbreeding with each other, like pretty much all purebred. So I would expect them all to look fairly similar, unless it's sort of a Habsburg sort of situation going on. I don't know.
Yeah, I will say though that personally I definitely enjoy the more differentiating the dragon's appearances from one another just adds a bit more kind of a uniqueness to them. And I'm not going to be looking at them going like, oh fuck, which one's that? Now I'll know which one is which. It's like, because I mean,
Yeah.
Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion, you could just like switch the colors, and that was it. And I'm guessing that was because Game of
Drogon was a chonker though.
yeah, no, he was obviously the bigger one, but if you like zoom in on their faces where the size is like a bit harder to discern, it can be surprisingly difficult to tell the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they were brothers, so that's kind of what I expect is for them to look pretty much the same. So the dragon lands, and these two slave-looking guys walk up to this dragon, and I think I see their balls hanging out the bottom of their dresses because they have no fear. They just march up to a fucking dragon.
Oh, right, like they're like the guys with the sticks, right?
Yeah, they have sticks, and like especially the guy on the left, I guess I'll call him. Uh,
The older looking
he
guy.
like the other dude has to like stop him. No, the younger looking guy. The younger looking guy, like the old guy has to stop him. He's about to fucking march right up to that dragon, show him what's up.
I mean, maybe you could say like he has to be impressive in front of the princess. If he can handle this dragon, who knows?
Yeah, maybe so, maybe so. Which they're speaking Valyrian, which I found interesting.
Yeah, I'm kind of happy that they're bringing in the Valyrian language a bit more. I'm glad they're putting like prop.
Um, I was just wondering, like, are we assuming these guys are like I don't know, they don't look like they would know Valyrian to me, is I guess my point.
Oh, I mean, it depends. Valyrian is obviously not going to be a language for the common folk. When it comes to nobility, it's a rarity, but not an impossibility. Especially probably when the Targaryens were at their height of their power like this. Nobility might have been encouraged a bit more to learn Valyrian. Because even if we,
Yeah.
go to Tyrion Lannister, it was very crude, granted, but he knew Valyrian. But I would imagine it's when it comes to the Valyrian language, it's mostly going to be just the Targaryens and maybe the Valerians, but we can talk about them a bit later.
Yeah. And so does that so you're saying you agree these slaves, it seems a little odd that these slave dudes know Valyrian?
Probably a little bit, yeah. But who knows? The whole thing, especially like located in King's Landing. King's Landing is probably going to be the most diverse place in the Seven Kingdoms because of its just being a trading hub, not just for Westeros, but for Essos and all along those lines. And Valyrian is more common in Essos. So you never know. Maybe someone from Lyseni or any other of the free cities comes on over, and because he speaks Valyrian, he has a better chance of becoming a specific dragon tamer. Because I would imagine that such a profession is a bit difficult to get into. It's not quite as easy as applying to McDonald's.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. And I mean, I guess if you need people to manage your dragons while you're off doing politics stuff, you'd want them to know how to communicate with the dragons and order them around. So it's fair enough. Just then the fact that the dragon listens to him when they lead it into the cave, like I found it surprising because from Game of Thrones, my understanding was like the dragons only listen to one person, but it seems like back in the heyday they had more people that could handle a dragon.
Yeah, it's a little bit off. I didn't so much as look at it as them like ordering the dragon, more so them just kind of guiding it. Queen says it's done. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
like they're like the. This is probably a poor example, but the airplane's flying. There's the guy at the bottom swinging those red sticks or whatever. Like, not so much.
Yeah,
Like,
they're taxiing the dragon back into its bay.
yeah. And besides, like, as intelligent as
Yeah,
dragons are, they're still like somewhat animalistic. So taming them and in a way to even listen to other Targaryens doesn't strike me as unreasonable. Now, if they started flying on them, then I'd have some questions. But in that simple aspect, I don't think that's too groundbreaking.
yeah. dragon can understand the significance of an iron throne, then I think they can figure out how to walk into a cave.
We don't talk about that. Don't bring that shit up again ever. Alrighty. So, is there anything else that you want to bring, or shall we kind of go to the next important scene?
So as we move along, the princess starts walking back over to the cart where she talks with the Hightower girl.
Yeah.
What was her name? Like Allison, I think.
Alicent. Yeah.
And they seem a little flirty.
Maybe.
Was I the only one that felt they seemed a little flirty?
I mean, I think in that particular scene, I didn't pick anything up, but there is the later scene where I'm just like, we got, they enjoy their tacos,
Yeah. They definitely seems like there might be something there. But the princess, I found her an incredibly hard character to get a read on.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of the episode, I was very confused by her motivations. Like, what does she want, and what is she like? What are her plans? And so this like her relationship with Allison is one example of that, where like it seems like they're kind of into each other, but the princess also seems like she might be into someone else that I'll talk about later. So
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
I will tell you, in in the books, there is very much like all sorts of loves and interests and cheating and backstabbing, all sorts of stuff, which is the normal here. So, but yeah, I didn't quite pick up anything along those lines at that moment. I was just like, oh, okay, they're good friends. Nothing too crazy boggled my mind. But then again, I don't understand women that well, so who knows?
Yeah, I didn't pick up on it on the first watch, but on the rewatch, where I kind of already had it in my head, that's when I kind of noticed that they seemed a little friendly. Like, because she's talking about riding together.
Do you think they were talking about the dragon? Anyways, moving on. I think.
Okay, so then we get a scene where they're walking through King's Landing, they're going up into the castle. And the princess goes to visit her mother.
Yeah, right. We already touched on this scene a little bit.
A little bit. And one thing I noticed is pretty much everyone the princess has talked to so far discourages her from riding her dragon. They all seem to think it's a bad idea for the princess to be riding her dragon.
I think so. Like, it makes sense for some of the other people to not be a fan of it. Like, for example, the Kingsguard who was guarding over her. I can understand his concern because, these are far more dangerous beasts to him. And if something happens to her, like, he will be in trouble. I don't know if Viserys would lop his head off, because Viserys is a pretty nice king, all things considered. But I will say, so I'm trying to remember, did the mom, like, try and say, like, you should stop flying or anything along those lines? I'm trying to remember it word for word.
Yeah, her mom says something along the lines of, I don't like when I don't like you to go flying while I'm in this condition. And then the daughter responds, you don't like me to go flying while you're in any condition.
Yeah, that's definitely really odd. Because, the Targaryens...
Right, like you would... Continue.
The Targaryens' whole shtick is their connection to dragons. That's like the big thing for the Targaryens, to ride dragons. So it does seem odd that the mother would be against it, though. Going into a little bit of the history, you probably wouldn't know this just by looking at her, but the mother is actually Arryn, from the Vale, Robin Arryn and Lysa Arryn.
Oh, she's not Targaryen?
She is half Targaryen on her mother's side. So, I don't believe she has a dragon. Let me look that up to make sure I'm getting my facts right. But, if that's the case, she grew up in the Vale, likely, and then was married to her cousin, Viserys, because Viserys didn't have any sisters to fuck. So, it's possible that given her history and lore, that maybe she just doesn't have quite as strong of a connection with dragons as her cousins do. And I mean, for example,
Yeah.
Viserys isn't a dragon rider, the king.
Really?
Yeah, he did ride Balerion, the Black Dread, Aegon the Conqueror's
Oh.
dragon. However, he bonded
Mm-hmm.
to Balerion like at the end of Balerion's life. Like I'm not sure about the time, but like once he bonded with Balerion, Balerion like keeled over like a year or two later,
Oh.
and he just and he
Okay.
yeah
That
and
makes sense. That explains for future scenes.
Yeah, and so he never bonded with another dragon. I think that's usually the custom that dragons will bond with many Targaryens, but Targaryens will only bond with one dragon. I think that probably mostly boils down to just dragons living longer than Targaryens. So like, if they just bound with one, then they're going to be
Mm-hmm.
on their ass for like 150 years out of 200 or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so I will say, checking up the information in regards to her, I'm seeing mention of like Dance of the Dragons, but it does not seem like she has any dragon of her own. So there we go. So this is a half
Okay.
Targaryen who probably was never given a dragon, probably due to her marrying in the Vale. Because like I don't
Yeah.
strike me as
So
common to like spread your dragons out through the other houses.
yeah. So she's basically a normie, is what you're saying.
Yeah, she's a normie Targaryen.
Yeah. So continuing on, they start talking. She starts talking to her mom. Her mom, I think she talks about how she smells. That might be later in the scene, which I thought was kind of weird that everyone's sniffing her. And then they talk about how the child bed is the battlefield. I guess of female royalty is kind of who she's referring to when she says us.
Yeah.
Um, which this seems like it's going to be kind of a thematic through line for the character of the princess to me. I don't know. Obviously we've only got one episode, but they put quite a bit of emphasis on comparing childbirth to a battlefield in this episode.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So I don't know. I would expect that to keep popping up in the future.
Yeah, I think there's probably some truth to that. Though the difference between you and I is I think that was a pretty, fair comparison. For starters, back in the medieval ages, I think, in the after credits when the guys were talking, they said like, the odds of a woman dying in childbirth was like 50%, and I was just like, bullshit. If like there was a flip of the coin, a girl would die every time she had one kid, the human race wouldn't have made it that far. So I think it was a bit safer than that. And even she's kind of proof of it because
Yeah.
she had like 4 or 5 stillborns before this incident. But anyways, I do think there is some truth that, especially in the situation, that giving birth is one of the most dangerous and difficult things that they can do. So I don't think she's directly comparing it to battlefield and fighting as far as more deadly and dangerous, but this is their duty. It's a man's duty to be a soldier and to fight wars and whatnot, whereas it is the lady's duty in order to make sure that there are people after all the fighting is done.
Yeah. I wasn't criticizing it. I was just saying that basically they put quite a bit of emphasis on this line of the child bed being their battlefield, and of course this is where the daughter says the line I was talking about earlier that is so cliche in my mind. I'd rather serve as a knight and ride to battle in glory.
Yeah, I
Which I mean, I don't hate it, but it is. I am a little tired of it.
Yeah, but
I grow weary.
yeah, I interpreted it a little bit differently, and I think it's because, like, at least so far, she does seem to be more ladylike than tomboyish until that line. So I interpreted it less so of her saying, like, I want to go to battle, or like, I would rather go to battle than do this. Because, she hasn't quite seen battle, and she's probably only heard of it in stories, whereas she's seen the pregnancies that her mother has gone through several times, and it's not pleasant.
Yeah, yeah, that's a fair interpretation.
All right. Anything else that you want to go over in particular with this chubby mama?
I don't think so. The scene pretty much
All right.
stays on the same topic from there, and then we move on to the council meeting.
Yeah, little small council meeting. We get Corey's Valerian talking about how the Triarchy, which is going to be three free cities off in Essos, have united and are currently conquering the Stepstones, which is actually going to be a very important integral part. I'm assuming it'll probably be brought up in the next episode, depending on how fast they go through these events and moments.
Yeah, this was a kind of scene that I didn't even really pick up on my first watch. It was on my second watch that, because basically everyone writes him off when he brings this up.
Yeah.
So I also did on my first watch through. But then on my second watch through, I realized like how much emphasis what's his name? Corlys?
Corey's.
Corlys, how much emphasis he puts on these the free cities and the Triarchy. And so yeah, I was kind of thinking that's probably going to be relevant in the future.
Yeah, it's going to be probably not as big as you might think, but it makes sense for him to be far more concerned about the situation than all of the rest of the nobility, because Corey's is going to be the master of ships, and the reason he's the master of ships is because his house is kind of famous for being good seafarers and whatnot. So a lot of their wealth, and at this point, they're the richest house. Like, in Game of Thrones, the Lannisters were the richest. At this point in time,
Yeah.
the Valerians are the richest. And it's all because of Corey's. This one guy single-handedly made them stupid rich. And so his concern is that, if the Stepstones are kind of like at the bottom of the narrow sea, kind of near Dorne, if you can kind of picture the map in your head. And so a lot of seafarer goes through there. And so he's kind of worrying that if they take over that land, it's going to make, his merchant ships and seafaring cost him more. Like, he'll probably have to pay taxes or passages to go through, whereas, considering his power and nobility, he didn't have to worry probably as much of the piracy, because, he could buy enough guards and stuff to protect his wares. But against a Triarchy, a united fort of 3 free cities, that's a different story for him to handle.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, I will say though, aside from that, the only thing I can think of where it kind of delves in a little bit more is like mentioning how Rhaenyra is the cupbearer. So it's kind of like hinting at the father kind of does respect her to a certain extent, because you don't just make anyone your cupbearer, especially for like the small council meetings.
Are you being sarcastic? Because I took the cupbearer scene to be the exact opposite of like she's given just basically a servant tag.
Oh no! Remember when Jon Snow was made the steward to Jorah?
No.
You don't remember? So yeah. So okay. So back in Game of Thrones, Jon Snow, he wants to be a ranger. He's
Oh yeah. I remember what you're talking about. Yeah. You're saying that's the same thing?
Not identical. I think with Jon Snow, it's much more obvious that Jorah's going to try and kind of prepare him for leadership. I don't, because at this moment, Viserys has not officially or decided to name her as the heir, as he still has hope for a son and all that stuff. But I do think it.
Right. He's actively trying not to name her his heir, and even at this point, his brother is the heir. Uh, so like even if he wasn't having a son, she wasn't really like next in line at this point.
Yeah, no, she was not. But I do think there is a general kind of like trust and kind of bringing up of the position that she's in. I'm not saying that filling up the wine glasses is, a glamorous job by any means, but especially when you're dealing with the High Council, want to make sure that the people who are around you are ones who can trust.
Yeah, yeah, I guess that's fair enough. Which I do have some concerns about the High Council room that I'll bring up at a later point. Um, so she fills up their cups. Corlys, or they talk about how his brother has not been attending council meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, since they made him commander of the watch, he's just been asking for a lot of money, and that's about it. Um, and then I think that's about when Corlys goes back into the Triarchy. Starts bringing that shit back up, and once again gets just freaking ignored.
Yeah, Otto Hightower's just like, we heard you, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, yeah. Which I go back and forth on Hightower. Like, at times he gives me kind of Ned Stark vibes, and then at other times he gives me kind of idiot vibes. But maybe that goes hand in hand, being like Ned Stark and being an idiot.
I was going to say, like, I can kind of see, like, a little bit of Ned Stark, but not a lot. Like, as you brought it up, like, okay, I can see, like, some connections, but I think deep down this guy is probably more in line with Tywin than Eddard, but probably not quite as competent as Tywin is.
Okay, yeah, I could see some Tywin vibes as well. And then they talk about the childbirth for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. It's a boy. It's a boy. It's going to be dandy.
Yeah, the king's convinced it's going to be a boy.
To be fair,
and he's throwing a tournament before the kid's even born, and the maester's like, you might want to wait until it's born to throw the tournament. And the king's like, nah, dog, it'll be fine.
Oh, yeah, just like in a horror movie when everyone's all like, oh, let me show you my pictures of kids.
Yeah.
Alright, so now after all that, we get the scene where the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, I'm drawing a blank on his name because he actually isn't, sadly, despite being played by a really cool actor, he's not quite that key of a character. But he's escorting, Rhaenyra to Damien, who is on the Iron Throne, and there was a part that bugged me before we even see Damien or Damien, however you pronounce it. She asked
Daemon, I think it is.
Yeah, she asks him, "Does my father know that Damon is here?" And he's like, "No," and she's like, "Good." And I'm just thinking, like, motherfucker, you're the Kingsguard. If you know something, then the king should know.
Yeah, which I like. I like how the Kingsguard guy he what does he say? He's like, "Oh gods!" Whenever he sees Daemon sitting on the throne, he freaks out a little bit. Yeah, and the princess is like, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." I'm like, would this guy really not worry about it? I feel like he'd be going to the king with that shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, they definitely make it seem like he's more loyal to the princess than to the king.
Yeah. I will say, I mean, it is just kind of like such a small character, because all things considered, I don't think there's enough lore and character specifically to him. I know he's the Lord Commander, which, being the Lord Commander kind of gives you the idea, that's the guy the king trusts the most.
Yeah. But maybe not.
Yeah. So, moving on along, we get to where, she approaches her uncle, and we get the whole.
And they're speaking Valyrian.
Yeah. We get the go to, uncle niece incest build up, all that good stuff.
Okay, so yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is these two also kind of give each other some fuck me eyes.
Yeah.
So now the princess has given both the Hightower girl and the her uncle fuck me eyes.
Yeah. I will say though, I do think the fuck me eyes are much stronger with Damien. Like both in him giving him and her giving them.
Yeah, which I do. I love the dialogue. What was it? They're talking about the tournament, and let me see where is it in my notes. The king is holding a tournament in my honor, and then she responds, "The tournament is for his heir," and then he responds, "Just as I said." I like that dialogue pretty good.
Yeah.
It was pretty witty.
So now I'll be completely honest, because while we have Matt Smith on here, when I heard about the casting for Matt Smith, I was worried.
Care to elaborate?
Because Damon, I've always pictured him as a bit more of an imposing character. Not like, massive like Sandor or Gregor or anything, but like I kind of pictured him more as the Targaryen version of Jaime Lannister,
Mm-hmm.
And I look at Matt Smith, and I can't help but picture him in a bow tie and a fez,
Yeah, he's definitely definitely not the most intimidating as far as like stature goes, but I think he does a really good job of looking kind of conniving. Like he's always got a scheme going, kind of vibes. You know what I mean?
Well, not just that, but like, do you hear the train going by or the fire truck?
I do.
God damn it. Oh. All right. So, but yeah, I will say, like, after this episode and seeing, Matt Smith's performance in all these situations and whatnot, I have been pretty effectively, my mind has been changed about it. I don't think he's quite good looking enough, because Damon, everyone talks about, like, oh man, that's a sexy son bitch. Don't think Matt Smith quite pulls that off, but his general performance and feeling and confidence and I think everything else about him is pretty much a perfect casting.
Yeah, I think he does really well as Damon.
Right. Now,
having like obviously he is the only Damon I know, but I like Damon as a character so far.
Yeah. Yeah, because the main thing I was worried about was like, if I'm seeing this guy fighting and doing well, I'm not going to believe it. But no, I did see him fighting, I did see him doing well, and I did believe it. It's amazing what bulky armor can do to a guy.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know that we see him doing that well fighting, but
Oh, well, when you learn about the guy he was fighting, he did pretty well. But with that, while we're on this, we see the Iron Throne and its redesign.
Oh yeah, it is a little bit more intimidating than it was in Game of Thrones.
Yes, I like approximately half of it.
Which half?
The chair half. I'm not a big fan of all the swords that are just like melted and laying down on the steps.
But isn't that how it's described in the books? Like it's like the swords make it like steps up to it.
Yeah, but it's like the steps like the throne in the books is massive. Like when you sit on that, your feet are above most people's heads. So even this is a little dinky compared to what the book. But that's the thing. It's like an entire culmination of like jagged swords and whatnot. The swords, like, I think the throne itself is good, but like the swords that are like strewn about around the throne, it feels like Aegon just got bored. It's just like, fuck it, it's not working. Threw the swords on the ground and just said, "Melt it, bitch."
Yeah, I can see your point. I think that they had a tough task of wanting to make the throne closer to what was in the books, but also the throne from the show has become so iconic that you can't completely change it. Mm-hmm. So they kind of had to go down this middle road.
Yeah. I think just the new design in general is better, but I think if they kind of cut the swords, or at least honestly like taken a few of them off. But to each their own.
It does look a little bit funny now that you point it out.
Alright. So anything
So
else?
then Damon gives the princess a Valyrian steel necklace,
Yes.
which seems crazy to me. Just like maybe I'm in the Game of Thrones mindset. Like Valyrian steel is probably not as rare in this time period, but it seems like you'd want to be using that to make a weapon. I don't know.
So it's definitely not as rare because by the time we get to Game of Thrones, a couple of blades have gone missing along those lines and whatnot. Like, I think at this moment I need to put Discord on Do Not Disturb real fast. I'm gonna feel like a dick. Have you ever like been messaged by some, or have you ever messaged someone and then they immediately like go to Do Not Disturb?
No, I've never had that happen. I don't use Discord enough for that to happen.
I guess you're just too popular. Anyways, excuse me. So yeah, it's not as rare in this setting technically, but it's still pretty damn rare. With that said, it's not unbelievable for the prince of the Seven Kingdoms to be able to obtain that amount of Valyrian steel. Because I mean, with all of that, what are you gonna make? Like, I don't even think there's enough for a proper dagger.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. But you gather up enough necklaces, and you got enough. Then
You got a
I don't know.
dagger. There you go. Um, but yeah, so Valerian steel, it's definitely rare, but like its rarity like kind of varies. Like for example, the Citadel of Maesters, they're the teachers of Westeros and whatnot. They they have an actual class in regards to magic. And if you pass that class, you actually get a Valerian steel link for your chain. From what I understand, though, very, very, very few maesters pass or even take the class. So Valerian steel chain links are exceedingly rare as well. Though that does make me wonder, like, how much do those bastards have?
Right? Like, do they have a stockpile of Valyrian steel chain links that like nobody has because they don't know magic?
One second. All right. So yeah, but yeah. So given the amount it is, it's not anything that blows my mind. Like a Valerian steel trinket is definitely more likely than if he gave her a Valerian steel dagger or sword or any kind of weapon.
Okay,
Because like
sounds good.
Valyrian steel just pretty much stopped being made after Valyria blew up.
Yeah, sure. I guess I didn't realize Valyria blew up.
It blew the fuck up.
It's like a volcano.
That's pretty much how I like kind of Pompeii. That's how I always interpreted the doom of Valyria.
Huh. Huh.
All right.
I mean, I knew it was destroyed. I guess I just didn't know the details.
Now with that,
So,
anything?
moving along.
It's time for the
Are
talk.
we ready to move along?
Yeah, I think so. Taco Tuesday now.
Yeah, no, I called this the flirting with Baratheon, or I was confused, so I called her Baratheon girl. But I meant flirting with Hightower girl.
I mean, to be fair, she's got the hair of a Baratheon. I think, like, her hair color was never stated in the book, but I think Hightowers are normally, like, blonde or dirty blonde or even pale blonde, kind of like Targaryens in a way.
I mean, she's pretty brunette. She's not like black hair.
Yeah. But anyways,
Yeah, so they're just flirting. This is just a scene of them flirting, pretty much.
I have no idea what you're talking about. This is just a scene of two friends being friends.
Which honestly, it could be. It could be. They could just be good friends.
Nah, I think you hit the nail on the head. There's definitely, I feel, like, some sexual tension. Especially, like, I'm not remembering it word for word, but didn't she, like, say, like, oh, so long as I have you, it's all okay? Or it's like, we could leave or whatever?
Well, she says what I want to do is go ride around on a dragon with you and explore the world, basically.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, because she says she hopes her father has a son, which which that also, like, I'm kind of with the Hightower girl. Uh, I are you? Do you really hope your father has a son, or are you just saying that? But she insists because she wants to fly with her on Dragonback,
Gotta lie to get that pussy.
and she never jests about cake.
Yeah, I think that's like a bit all we can really delve into. They're obviously kind of building up their kind of friendship or maybe something a bit more. She says fuck the Septon or whatever, so not a whole lot to dig into, I feel like, with this scene. Unless you.
Well, she does. After being scolded a little bit by her girlfriend, she does tell her all the historical stuff like really easily and off the top of her head. Um, so there is like a look how smart the princess is aspect to this scene.
Yeah, definitely a bit of a clever girl, but to be fair, if anyone's going to know about, the histories and lores, it will be nobility, especially the Targaryens.
Yeah,
Alrighty.
yeah. And then she says "fuck the septa," which is pretty amusing in my opinion.
And then, moving on along, we get the Viserys got something on his back scene.
Yeah, he has a festering wound on his back.
I mean, I think it's safe to say that this is clearly just kind of setting up his inevitable passing. Because, obviously, it's kind of like with Robert Baratheon. You know he's gotta die eventually for the story to continue.
Yeah.
It's just in Robert's case, it was a random drunken boar situation. This, it's going to be more of disease and whatnot. Or just poor health.
Yeah, this is definitely pretty clear foreshadowing of the king's inevitable demise.
And that's kind of like all it is. But then we get a nice scene with him and his wife where he comes and checks on her while she's in the bathtub and like puts his hand in. It's just like he doesn't say too cold, but it's like
tepid.
Yeah, it's tepid. It needs to be like boiling and shit. I don't know exactly how I feel about this scene. Like, I like the emotion, but like, the whole thing, and this is like going back to that misconception of Targaryens being fireproof, which this show seems to be hammering in us as well, that Targaryens just have a natural fire resistance. They're dark elves from Skyrim, except white.
Yeah, they definitely seem to have a fire resistance. I don't know that I would say that this scene necessarily propagates that too much. All he says is, don't they know dragons prefer heat? Mm-hmm. Which could be interpreted as like you're fine in a hot bath, like the baby's not gonna be hurt by the hot bath because he's a Targaryen. Mm-hmm. There are definitely scenes later where like they just show Targaryens being fucking fireproof.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just like my main issue with that isn't really for the show writers and whatnot, but it's mostly on George at this point, because he's been quoted as saying like, Targaryens aren't fireproof. Did Viserys just wipe away the molten gold? Daenerys Targaryen was a special situation. And then, like, I didn't blame him on like the later seasons of Game of Thrones because that's D&D being dumbasses. But from what I understand, he's heavily involved in this. So, this is the point where he shows, like, Targaryens can be burned, but nope. He keeps foreshadowing that they just all have fire resistance and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, like, it definitely seems like if they get torched by a dragon, they'll die or something like that. But they definitely don't seem to be hurt by heat nearly as much as, like, a normal human would be.
But anyways, I definitely really enjoyed the scene. It was a very kind of nice, emotional scene. I could actually like legitimately feel kind of the love and connection between the two. And,
yeah,
it's obviously kind of like building up to like, this bitch is going to die. Because when she says, this is the last one, you're like, oh yeah, it definitely going to be the last one.
Yeah.
I just realized they foreshadowed both of their deaths back to back.
Yeah, one scene then the other. Just fucking death flags flying like nobody's business. That's how you know it's a Game of Thrones spinoff.
To be fair, like a lot of the characters we've already seen and met are going to die, but it's so far they haven't
Well,
been
I mean,
foreshadowed to die.
everyone dies eventually, right? Like all of these characters are dead by the time Daenerys Targaryen is born. So,
Yeah, you got
when
it.
you think about it that way,
You're right. You're right. Um, is there anything else in particular you want to kind of delve into this part?
I don't think so. I think that about covers. Oh, there is the king. The king is sure his child is going to be a boy. He reiterates that here because he had a dream, uh, of his son being born wearing Aegon's iron crown.
Mm-hmm.
And so, is Aegon's iron crown just the crown all the Targaryen kings use?
No, there's definitely different crowns. I know Jaehaerys had his own crown. Aegon had his own crown. Those are like the big two because Aegon was the first, and Jaehaerys is like the best king.
Okay.
So those are the crowns that I know off the top of my head, but I believe there were a few others.
Which I guess, in my mind, like this could have been like foreshadowing for what the baby was going to do, but I guess not. So it doesn't matter that much.
Who knows? We'll see. We'll see. All right.
The wife does have a funny line: "Born wearing a crown, God spare me. Birth is unpleasant enough as it is."
Yeah, that was a pretty clever line. I liked that one.
So moving along.
Now we get to see the gold cloaks and Damien kind of marching around. I like nothing really to say about like the very beginning of this. He gives a speech like, "Come on, let's clean up this city. It's swallowing," and all that stuff. Felt a little like, kind of anti-Viserys vibes, but nothing like
Yeah,
he didn't.
it does display the loyalty he has. Like, because when he's first given the speech, a part of me was like thinking these guys are rolling their eyes at this dude's cheesy speech, and then he calls them dogs, and they all start howling. And I was like, oh no, these guys are indoctrinated. Like, these guys love this crazy dude.
Oh yeah, no, they love him because Daemon is the guy. Once he was made Master of Laws, he pretty much said, "Hey, give me money so I can give these guys weapons and armors and whatnot." So he made the Gold Cloaks, the City Watch, like actually something to be feared and intimidated by.
Yeah, which I understood later, but at this point, basically the only indication of how much loyalty he has for me was them howling. And so then they charge into the streets like a bunch of freaking lunatics,
Yeah.
and just start grabbing people.
I know, right? Like,
I guess they have the faces of every criminal memorized or something, because they just start grabbing people.
I know, and it's very weird. Like, how first, like, got a lot of thieves. How did you guys know? Did they happen to be stealing on the night when you guys are fucking running around, kicking in doors, and just beating the shit out of people with cudgels?
Yeah, like, so I don't know if I'm supposed to assume that they're just grabbing random people and accusing them of random crimes, or if they are actually finding criminals and punishing them. Because it looks to me like they're just grabbing random people and accusing them of crimes.
Yeah, this feels more like, an army sacking a city rather than, the City Watch taking care. Like, and there's this, like, one thing that made me, like, really, like, I think I was somewhat getting, like, okay, I think they're rounding up criminals. But then a guy, like, kicks open a door that throws a guy out. And as he's, like, taking him away, you see two women inside screaming and crying. It's like, what the...
Yeah.
Like, okay, he was...
Dad is just eating dinner with his family, and he gets fucking drug out by the City Watch.
Like, oh,
Gets his
God.
arm chopped off.
Yeah, so...
And we get a fantastic scene of a dude getting
Castrated.
getting neutered,
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Castrated.
Yeah, and this is where we, like,
That's pretty cool.
it's made more apparent that at the very least they're accusing all these guys of being criminals.
Yeah, rape it. Murderer. Just pointing at random people.
Like, trial? What the fuck is that? Shink?
Yeah. Yeah. Who needs those?
Yeah. I think there probably was a better way of portraying this. Like, I don't know. like instead of maybe like charging into King's Landing and just rounding up all these random ass people, maybe we see them like dragging them out of the cell or whatnot to put on this display, or maybe make it feel
Or like maybe if they had like a list and they were going around rounding up people off of a list or something. But it definitely feels like they're just freaking randomly grabbing people and accusing them of crimes that they probably didn't even commit.
maybe that's
So and I don't know that that's the vibe they're going for.
that. Yeah, it's definitely very confusing. I think maybe they want to go with that vibe because the whole thing is I know that Damien is definitely a brutal guy. He's definitely the kind of guy who enjoys cutting off people's hands and executing criminals and whatnot. But there wasn't. I can't really recall there ever being a point where I would think he would go this far.
Yeah, and I feel like the reprimandation he gets after this doesn't add up to what he did. Like, if what he did was round up a bunch of random civilians and like cut off their arms and limbs and stuff and kill some of them, like I feel like everyone, the king especially, should be like a little bit angrier with him.
Yeah, I mean, at least Otto had some objections. And also, while kind of looking through the scene again, there are women in the background being grabbed and whatnot. Like, I thought it was just the two girls with the door that was kicked open. But no, if you go to, like, right before the guard, like, walks up to Damon and it's all like, murderer! You can see, like, there's at least one girl kind of, like, fighting a gold cloak trying to get away. So it's just like... And I'm not saying women can't commit crimes. But there's just something in the back of my head saying, like, this seems less legit now.
Actually, that, if anything, that makes it seem more legit to me. The fact that, because I thought they were just rounding up men and mutilating them for fun. But if they're doing it to women, then maybe they're really know all the criminals in the city off the top of their heads.
Maybe. But, so yeah, we get all the violence, all the massacre. Very confused about what I'm supposed to feel one way or the other. And then, we see Damien put the head on the cart, rides away, 2 full carts of just body parts.
Yeah. And then we're at the council, and the Hand is saying that Damon needs to be reprimanded for his actions, and the king is being a little bitch. And so the council seems very much against Damon, except for what was it? I always forget his name.
Corys.
Corys, except for Corlys, and the king, of course. Everyone else seems to hate Damon.
He was never a popular guy. Like, pretty much his best friend was his king, his brother.
Yeah. It definitely seems that way.
Well, but with that, while we're like on the council, I just want to ask you: do you remember like those trays in front of them where they put little marbles into them?
Yeah.
I like when I saw that, I'm just like, the fuck are those?
Yeah, I don't know why. I saw that, and I just was like, oh yeah, of course. They have to put their orbs into the tray, as the council does. But now that you mention it, yeah, that's a little weird. A little weird that they're putting their orbs. I guess even back in Game of Thrones times, people had to be pondering their orbs.
I mean, the only thing that I can think of is like there's something in like Game of Thrones where they mention it once and then it's never brought up again, and it's just like in the like I just don't recall it. But yeah, I'm just like when I saw that, I was just like, what the fuck is that? So
yeah, I mean, I don't think they mention it in the show. Like they might mention it in the books, but they do not say anything about putting orbs in trays in the show.
Well, it never appears in Game of Thrones. Like, and there were several small
Definitely
council
not in Game of
meetings.
Thrones.
All right. But with that, now we have a little bit of a verbal sparring match between Damien and Otto, where, Otto gets, of course, upset, and Damien, like, doesn't quite possibly get the punishment that he deserves. But maybe all those guys were bad. In which case, it wasn't that bad.
I mean, that's what I have to assume. Because I can't imagine if he was murdering random people, the king and chorus would be on his side.
Yeah.
So I have to assume at this point that he was actually rounding up criminals. I have no clue how he was managing to do that so efficiently, but good on him, I guess.
Yeah.
Guess he's just made the watch freaking a machine, a well-oiled machine.
So there's a little bit more. Otto starts kind of sparring with Damien. Damien saying like, if only you were as good with your wife as you are with the gold cloaks or something along those lines. And Damon just...
Yeah, and then Damon goes off on his wife. He's not a fan of that woman.
No, which I do like. She's another kind of like small part. I don't recall her being like that bad. Damon's just kind of a cunt.
Is she considered ugly? Because Damon seems to think she's freaking ugly.
Like, probably. Like, she's probably not a 10 out of 10. Knowing Damien, like, she could be like a solid 6, and Damien would probably still call her ugly.
Yeah, fair enough. And she doesn't have white hair, I assume. So, that probably makes her the ugliest woman on Earth.
By Targaryen standards, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and Damon fucking claps back by saying that Otto can have his wife, because Otto's wife has recently died, which is pretty brutal.
Yep. And, of course, he gets away with it because, Viserys is his brother. With the king, you can do whatever you want.
Which, considering how much freedom Daemon is given for being the king's brother, he does not appreciate that. He takes that for granted, for sure.
Oh, immensely. And it becomes more apparent in a later scene, obviously.
Yeah. Daemon does not appreciate his bro as much as he should.
Alright, what are we at? Hour and 17 minutes. Oh shit, we might actually be EFAP level.
Oh, come on. We're doing better than that. We're 25 minutes into the episode. Come on.
Yeah. Oh, you're a little bit further than I am. I'm still at 23. So, we can kind of continue with the small council. Damien leaves. Da-da-da-da-da. Get more talk. Oh, right. Brothel.
Uh-huh.
Do we need to talk about
he goes
the brothel?
to the brothel. I think I took some notes on the brothel. Cut to whorehouse. Prince is fucking a hoe, but he's not feeling it. The whore. So one thing I found odd is the prostitute seems to think that Daemon is worried about being replaced, which seemed odd to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like why would he be worried about being replaced, or why would she think that's what his concern is?
To be fair, this particular whore, I don't think they explained it incredibly well in this first episode, though it's difficult when you don't have, paragraphs to go into. But these two had a bit more of a stronger connection in a way. Like, there's definitely more to them than just random slut he paid to have.
Yeah, I definitely understood that from the scene, but still, I don't understand what she means when she says, like you're the king's brother, they can't replace you.
Yeah, it feels like a bit of a nothing burger. Like, I feel like you could cut that entire scene and you don't miss a whole lot. But maybe that scene was...
Yeah,
maybe the scene is...
Which would be kind of my criticism of the scene, is that nonsense happened there.
I mean, and titties, though not very impressive titties.
Yeah, we don't get that good a view of them. It's kind of sad.
Well, I
And then we're at the journey
yeah.
after this. Do you want to continue talking about titties?
I mean, I'm always willing, but just kind of sticking. The one thing I can say for that is it probably just served as an introduction to the character. She's called a Mycia. Mycia. I fuck me if she's like from Esso, so they got those bullshit names. Um, so she's not going to be like a ground shaking character, but she does have her place in the story. So I think that was just their kind of attempt to introduce her rather than, uh, during that one scene with Damien that, we'll get into later. So
Yeah, I guess that's fair. That it makes sense that they'd want to have her show up before she becomes more relevant.
so now we are at the tourney. Viserys is giving
You're at the tourney.
Viserys is giving his speech. He's like, my wife is fat and she's about to shoot out a kid. All that good stuff. And I gotta say, I do, like, at the very start, I did very much enjoy the tourney. Something that, I'm not super experienced with. I've been trying to, like, educate myself a bit more, thanks to, like, Shadiversity and whatnot, when it comes to, like, the armor and whatnot. And for the most part, I do want to give credit to this. I really do enjoy the armor that the knights and stuff are wearing during the joust. And you can forgive quite a bit of it because in a tourney, you can, like, armor was naturally more decorative in a lot of ways. It wasn't warfare, per se.
Yeah.
So I definitely appreciate that. Also, a lot of little things. I just recently watched a video from Shad about it. But if you kind of look at the shields, you'll notice that, like, in the top left corner, there's a little bit of a lip to them. And the reason was, as the lance would come and hit the shield, that lip was there, so if it started to slide up towards your face, the lip would stop it so it wouldn't actually make it to your face. And, it's just...
Oh, there is a little lip there.
Yeah, just little details like that. It's something that I don't appreciate. Like, I wouldn't appreciate on a first watch, but when Shad tells me to appreciate it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's good shit right there.
Yeah, that is, it's really subtle lip, too, because, like, when I picture, I guess, a jousting shield in my head with a lip, like, I picture kind of a big round circle in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if that's a real thing, but like you know what I'm talking about? You seen those shields where they have like a big round thing in the corner?
Oh, like, are you talking, like, on their shoulder? Is that what you're talking about?
I don't know. Maybe I'm losing my mind.
We can talk about, like, armors and armor later on another podcast, maybe. But with that, I think probably the first, like, really relevant scene is when we have the Baratheon ride up and ask for the favor of Rhaella Targaryen, I believe. Hold on.
He doesn't ask for it by name. He asks for the favor of the queen who never was.
Well, yeah, but I want to try and make sure I get their fucking names.
Oh yeah, I don't know anyone's names. These are nonsense names to me.
Rhaenys Targaryen, that was it. So yeah, and the queen who never was, and she goes and's like, yeah, here you go. Then the king and the High Tower, Otto and Viserys, is all like, the Baratheon's tongue should be taken out for saying such things or whatever. And Viserys just says, wagging tongues can't change the law or progenitor or whatever, so let them wag. I was actually, like, really disappointed. Mm-hmm. This is a very personal thing, but one of my favorite quotes from Game of Thrones was one from Tyrion, where he heard about Cersei, like, killing a bunch of guys, or I can't remember, it's like ripping out their tongues because they were talking about how Joffrey was a bastard. And his response to that was like, if you rip out a man's tongue, you're not showing the world that he's wrong. You're just showing that you fear what he says. Which I thought, like, right there would have been a nice place to slip it in, but that's nitpicking. It's fine how Viserys took it, but since we never got Tyrion to say that in the show,
And one question I have for clarification is, so is the Queen Who Never Was and Coral married? Yeah. Are those two married?
Yes, they are.
Okay, that's what I thought. Also, I'm calling him Coral from now on because I can't remember his actual name.
That's fair. That's fair. All right. So, anyways, right after that, the Baratheon gets his shit stomped. So, what good that favor did?
Right. Unfortunately, he got paired up against a bad opponent.
Well, a good opponent. That's what made it bad.
Well, yeah, right. So then Cole catches the princess's eyes there,
Yeah, definitely.
and he becomes the third person in this series that the princess has given fuck me eyes to. So there is a dialogue I found kind of odd here when she asks her Kingsguard about Kristen Cole. She says, "What do you know about this Sir Christian Cole?" And he responds with, "He's common born, son of a lord, and other than that, and the fact that he just unhorsed 2 Baratheons, or both of the Baratheon lads, I really couldn't say."
Mm-hmm.
And something about like I really couldn't say isn't an answer to the question. Like, you would end that sentence with "I don't know anything," or something like that.
Well, to be fair, he didn't know a lot, so he shared with what he did know, and then said, "That's about it." It was just a different.
But he didn't say that's about it.
Like,
he said, "I really couldn't say."
Yeah, like it's just a different flavor of saying, "I don't know."
I don't think that that's thesaurizes. I don't think that those are synonymous phrases. It sounded odd to me. It's kind of nitpicky, but it just was a weird dialogue that stuck out to me.
All right. So now we're getting to a part where I actually really dislike. So we have Daemon.
Real quick interruption. You mentioned before we even started the podcast something about the Targaryen flag having 4 legs.
Yes.
And that being wrong.
Yes.
I'm looking at the Targaryen flag right now, and it absolutely has 4 legs.
Yes.
And it should only have 3?
2.
2?
Yeah.
So it's like a profile sort of picture of the dragon.
Well, no, because think about this. Dragons in Game of Thrones only have 2 legs, and they're wings.
Oh! You're correct. That is weird that it has 4 legs.
All right. So this is going...
Yeah, and when you Google Targaryen flag, it's only got 2.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely kind of going back and forth. From what I understand, where this originates, in the original series, they were doing it all, and then someone who was like the reading expert of Game of Thrones or whatever, like saw the situation and be like, "Hey, it's only got 2 legs, now 4." And so they changed it up, and I think they changed like all the physical stuff, but ironically they weren't able to change the digital like representations. So I think if you go back to Game of Thrones, particularly I think it was season 6 is when they started using more I might be wrong, who knows, because it's all like hearsay and whatnot, but in season 6 where Daenerys is like sailing across the sea to Westeros, if you look at the sails, those also have 4 legs. So this doesn't originate here. Best case like I can kind of come up and understand is like it was a fuck up, and now they're just kind of like embracing that fuck up to try and explain it so it's technically not a fuck up, even though it's still clearly a fuck up.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's not show ruining or anything, but it's the kind of attention to detail you'd like them to pick up on that and correct it.
Yeah.
I think
it's clearly not a big deal. I mean, and you can always like interpret it differently along certain lines, because obviously dragons don't have 3 heads, yet this one does. Why is that? Well,
yeah,
there's themes to it. It's because Aegon and his 2 sisters conquered the 6 kingdoms. So each head represents them and the 3 dragons that were used to conquer. But like having the extra legs, there's like no symbolism to that. It's like if you took out the wolf of Stark and you gave it, 6 legs, or if you gave it 2 heads. Like, it just seems a little bit off in some cases.
Yeah, it definitely seems a little bit off, and I like the way it looks with 2 legs better.
Mm-hmm. All right, but with
because it's just weird that they would even think to have a 4-legged dragon. But yeah, moving on. Don't want to become EFAP.
Yeah. So Damien picks to joust against the Hightower boy, the son of Odo Hightower.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is like kind of up in the air. But I'ma just say this. Damien's a fucking cheater.
Yeah. Okay, I was going to ask about that. Like, are you allowed to trip your opponent's horse?
As far as I'm aware, like, I don't think George has gone into great detail about the rules of jousting and if it's different from actual historical jousting. I do recall watching a Shad video in regards to this, and he was actually, I think, talking about House and the Dragon. Like, the rules differed immensely from, whoever was hosting the tournament and whatnot. For example, like, some places would have jousting competitions without the fence in between, which was immensely more dangerous. But I don't know, it really strikes me as odd that the attacking of a horse would be allowed, because, I mean, at that point, what's the point of jousting? Just aim for the horse every time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I was thinking. It's like, why isn't everybody fucking tripping the horse?
Yeah.
This seems like a really good way to get an easy win.
Yeah. Like, some people say that, Damien can do that because of his position and whatnot. Like, I'm not angry that he wasn't punished. I'm angry that nobody reacted pissed off except, like, even Otto. Otto, who...
The whole crowd does boo him.
Do they?
I mean, so the subtitles just now said cheers and applause, but it sounded like booing to me whenever I watched it. Like the crowd did not seem thrilled with him tripping the horse.
Well, either way, it doesn't seem to matter. He continues on, and Otto doesn't do anything despite his son just eating shit because of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, Otto definitely seems bothered by it, but doesn't react. Which, after this scene, someone comes up and like whispers something in Otto's ear, because you see fucking his kid get picked up and his face is all fucked up. And I was assuming that the person whispering in his ear was like updating him about his son's condition, but apparently they were telling him about the Queen giving birth.
Oh, also, going back to the whole kind of Hightower situation, Alicent Hightower, she must hate her brother to give her favor to the bastard.
Oh, yeah.
Like, here's the thing. She walks over to get it, and his dad's just like, really? Really? And she still does it. I'm just like...
Hello?
Oh, can you hear me? Testing.
Hello. You have returned?
Am I here now?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You are.
Okay. So where was I? Right. Bitch must hate her brother.
Yeah. Yeah, Alicent giving Daemon her favor was a little odd. Although I don't know, she gives her father like a guilty look while she's doing it. So I don't know if they're allowed to not give their favor when it's requested.
Maybe. But maybe she just wants that Targaryen dick.
I mean, maybe so, but I kind of think she swings for the other fence, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I will say, though, it is weird that you mentioned the guy who comes and talks to Hightower, and then, like, he whispers over to Viserys, and Viserys goes, why did they tell the Hand? Just tell the king.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
It's like, because they went to Hightower, I assumed they were telling him about his son, like updating him on his son's condition. But no, they just walked past the king to tell him so he can lean over and tell the king.
All right. And then we get to kind of the scene of kind of where we start to see the bitch doesn't have long, as there are troubles with the birth.
Yeah, the baby's sideways, and they can't rotate it.
Ah, come on, just get your hands up there and give it a good twist.
Yeah, just give it a little twist.
Piece of cake, no problem. Alright. But then we're immediately thrust back into the tourney. And I'm not a fan of this next part either. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I was reading my notes. Sorry.
All right. So,
Oh yeah, where people just start fucking killing each other.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Yeah, that also seemed a little bit odd to me.
Like, it just seemed, it struck me as just like, violence for the sake of violence. Like, the whole fact that,
And I think when we get if we get to the director's or the writer's commentary, that's exactly what it is. Is it's violence for the sake of violence.
and they didn't need it. I think the tourney in and of itself was action packed enough. You didn't
Yeah,
need.
if they wanted to throw like duels into the tourney, then I think that would be fine. But having people just like lose jousts and then go up and murder the person they lost to is kind of insanity.
It's not just that, but it's like how people react. The audience is suddenly
Oh
starting.
yeah, everyone's happy.
Yeah, kill him, kill him, and like the nobility, like the Valerians are just like, oh, look at all that violence. Stop it! Like remembering.
Yeah, and like I thought these were like highborn knights for the most part. Like, are they not worried about like a lord's son getting freaking murdered and that causing like, problems in the kingdom?
I guess not. God, this reminds me of like going back to the first season of Game of Thrones with their joust. Gregor Clegane, quote unquote, accidentally kills someone. He kills a Hugo of the Vale, who, fun fact, the actor for Hugo of the Vale, the guy who like died in the joust, he's actually going to be playing twin Lannister characters in this, from what I understand.
Huh.
So it's cool. I think it's like the Lord Paramount. I might be wrong about that, but he's moving up in the world. He went from a random Valeman to a Lannister. But with that, everyone was like shocked and horrified when that accidental death took place. And
Yeah.
and then when Gregor like loses to Loras, gets pissed, chops his horse's head off, and then attacks Loras, what happens? People are horrified. Sandor jumps in to save Loras. They fight, and Robert says, "Stop this madness!" The king, who probably more than any other loves violence and warfare more than anyone else, told them to stop.
Yeah.
These people
Yeah,
are
very different vibes from that journey.
these guys are they're coming off as more bloodthirsty and casual than Robert was, which is an accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could explain it as just like them's the times, but it definitely doesn't seem right to me.
It goes beyond them's the times, because even them's the times, it was never like this fuckery.
Yeah, it's yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that whole scene. Actually, I am sure. I'm sure that I don't like that whole scene.
It's probably, in my opinion, the worst scene in the episode.
Yeah, yeah. So then everyone's killing each other, and it takes a moment to focus on the Hightower girl's like nail thing. She like bites her nails or like scratches around her nails whenever she's nervous.
Yeah, something like that.
I'm not sure if that's relevant to anything. They focus on it a couple times in the episode, so I took note.
Yeah, nothing quite really to deep in on that level, I don't think. But with that, we're back to the pregnancy now, and I have mixed feelings, but I think it's
Mixed feelings about what?
it's mostly on the positive. Like, my one issue with this, Varys decides to cut the baby out in order to save his kid, because it's coming to the point where it's like either he loses both or he tries to save the child.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan of him just like deciding. Like, I understand him deciding, but I feel like he needs to like maybe give her update on the situation, kind of, rather than just hold her down and cut the bitch open.
I'm not in love with the way that the scene where they start the C-section goes, but I definitely Like, what is he supposed to do? Go up and be like, "Hey, they're about to fucking kill you to get that baby out. Good luck." There's not really words that you can say. So I think the king does his best, like comforting her as they're about to murder her. But I definitely feel like the way the like nurses go about preparing her for the C-section is a little weird, because like they go up and like they they grab all her limbs and then they just freaking drag her down. They just pull her down really, like, I don't know. It seemed kind of aggressive to me.
I don't know. I'll have to ask my mother. She's a nurse. She might be more educated on the topic of it.
Yeah, probably seen a couple C-sections.
But with the C-section, we also are getting kind of like back and forth plays with Damon against Kristen in their little joust and whatnot, which eventually turns into a duel. And I think it's obviously trying to, like, correlate the duties and violence of men with the duties and dangers of the pregnancy.
Yeah, this is where the childbirth bed is the battlefield kind of theme and metaphor is really realized. Like, this is where they really start emphasizing that.
And I think it was incredibly well done, despite my like issues with like how Viserys may have handled it. Like, I think, like, I don't know, maybe there's a bit of a time limit on the whole situation, so he couldn't like just talk to her about it. Like I said, I'll talk to my mom, but I definitely like, I've watched some like gruesome stuff with Game of Thrones and whatnot. This was hard for me to get through.
They did a really good job of making it incredibly uncomfortable to watch. The actress does a fantastic job of looking like confused and drugged up and scared. And yeah, it is. I was extremely uncomfortable watching this scene.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show you, it's not the violence and the blood that can make something uncomfortable. It's just like why it's happening and what's going on. Just, oh god, I'm watching it right now, even without volume, and fuck me.
Yeah, yeah, it is an uncomfortable scene to watch. They really make you feel for her.
Yep, and then so we talked about that. Now let's specifically focus kind of like on the fight between Damon and Kristen. So, I mean, it's an okay fight. Like, doesn't strike me as amazing. Well, before I forget, I've been meaning to bring this up. I don't like Damon's helmet. Like, particularly for jousting. He needs his face covered up better. That's how you get a splinter in your eye.
Yeah, yeah, and it looks dumb. Like, I think there's probably a cool way to do like a dragon wing helmet, and I don't think this is it.
Yeah, it's definitely not. I think it would be better. Like, no offense to Matt Smith, I think it would be better if we didn't see his face as much.
Yeah, and I mean, not because like every other knight in the tourney has their face covered, pretty much, right?
Yeah, they got
Like there was a couple of the ones that died, I think, that didn't have their faces covered.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the helmet. His armor looks cool though.
Yeah, I'll say just this. I'm just glad that he is wearing a helmet. I was partly worried that in this series we'd have too many like helmetless fighters and whatnot, like fucking Jon Snow,
Yeah.
Brienne of Tarth, Jaime Lannister, all these assholes going into battle without a helmet, except for Grey Worm, who's the only fucker to put on a helmet.
Yeah, so we get a pretty good fight between Daemon and Cole.
Yeah, we see Damon's like kind of arrogance get the best of him. Gotta make sure you get them to yield, because if they don't surrender, they're probably still going to be kicking. And Kristen gets a bit of a cheap shot on him, but hey, it's a tourney, it's a sport, you got to play to win, right? And that's what you get for tripping the horse.
Shouldn't have turned his back. Daemon shouldn't have turned his back on an opponent who hadn't yielded. Like that's on Daemon, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Plus, you trip the horse. Fuck you, Daemon.
Yeah, Damon has been a real prick. Because also, while he's jousting Cole, did you notice that he fucking yeets his squire
Yeah.
with his horse when he's coming around. Like they during this tourney, they definitely make Damon look like a dick.
Right.
I was kind of getting like Joffrey vibes from him at points, like especially when he's celebrating his victory over Cole for that brief moment.
Mm-hmm.
Which actually, that one's kind of an interesting parallel that they draw. They draw the parallel between like Daemon celebrating his victory prematurely with the king celebrating his son.
Ooh, that's pretty deep. I like them themes.
Yeah, I mean it's a decent little parallel there. And then of course, he ends up losing because apparently Cole's a badass. Man, fucks.
Yep.
Which I was surprised he doesn't do anything after yielding. Like he refuses to accept Cole's hand when getting up, and he looks a little pissed, but he doesn't like go for a backstab or anything afterwards.
Yeah.
Which I appreciated.
Yeah, I've definitely. You're not the first person I heard who said such a thing like that. And I think that was pretty good because like despite like Damien, like it's a bit like flip floppy on the situation, but there are still limits to what Damien can do and get away with. I don't think he could just kill Cole and then all would be fine.
So then after Damon loses, we're back to the queen, and there's a shot of her hand focusing kind of on her, I assume, wedding ring, which I didn't notice this until just now, but later on when we're in the king's room and he's mourning, he's holding her ring. Mm-hmm. Which when I was watching that scene earlier, I took note of it because I was like, what's up with his ring? Is his ring significant? But yeah, it's the queen's ring.
Yeah.
I see that now.
Mm-hmm.
It all makes sense. It all comes together.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah, it's kind of nice that they definitely kind of hint at it before that particular scene. Luckily, I don't think it's too much of a leap in logic for the audience to kind of put two and two together.
Well, maybe I'm just stupid then.
Oh, no, but it's like, no.
So then we're... Continue?
No, it's not saying that you're stupid for not knowing it. I didn't really notice it, but it's just like, it's just the little details. And, if you kind of think about, he's grieving, who's he's grieving for, his wife, he's holding the ring, connect the dots from there on.
Mm-hmm.
But when there's so much going on in the episode itself, sometimes your mind's kind of filled with like other aspects and whatnot.
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that. So we're back to the tourney, and Cole just beat Damon's cheeks. And he goes up and asks, first he's Dornish.
Yeah.
Which, no, I guess, never mind. I'm just, again, being stupid. So he's Dornish, and he asks for the princess's favor. And the princess kind of is giving him some, like, fuck me eyes. She does a weird smirk, and it gives him the favor. So, that's your love square right there. The princess... Allison, Cole, and Damon.
I feel like it's a love pyramid at this point. She's at the top, and then there's three people below her who she wants to fuck, and vice versa.
But a love. Oh, I guess if it's a pyramid with three corners on the bottom, three vertices on the bottom.
Yeah.
Because when I think of pyramid, I think of pyramid with like a square bottom.
Yeah, because a love square indicates that like, there's like another kind of connection. But no, they're all pointed straight at Rhaenyra.
Yeah, you're right. I see what you're saying. Is like a love pyramid.
Yeah, trust me, I know my shapes. But I think most people will get what you mean.
You graduated second grade.
I think most people will get what you mean when you say love square.
Yeah.
All right. And then I'm drawing a blank. The king names his son along those lines and whatnot. And as she dies and passes, news kind of like makes it to all the other nobility about the sad situation. So everyone just starts like getting up and like, get the fuck out.
Yeah, everyone dips out of the tourney.
And then
And then we have like a jarring cut, in my opinion, to a funeral,
yes.
which I don't love how they just can't tell you the baby died at the funeral.
There was a little bit of
Like,
a hint before the funeral.
Was there?
If you go back to when the king is like, when the maester asks, "Did you guys pick a name?" And he says, "I think it's Balon." The maester's like holding the child, and I think the crying stops, and you see the maester look worried.
Oh, I didn't catch that. I did. I mean, the maester definitely. I can see his worried face, but I didn't realize the crying stopped. So, I mean, I guess maybe that's a good way of showing a baby die.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some babies stop crying, I think, on
What would you
occasion.
prefer? He get yeeted out the window?
Well, like, the maester could be like, I got bad news, bro. Or something. I don't know.
I'm just picturing the maester walking up to the king, clapping him on the back. Got that bad news, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, we skip to the funeral, and we have a situation where, like, the king is very distraught, and he just seems unable to really be able to give the Dracarys command. And
Yeah.
and we probably have probably the nicest scene involving Daemon, where he encourages his niece Rhaenyra to assist the father.
Yeah, Daemon seems like a genuinely good guy for the first time in the episode.
Yeah, I mean,
and for the last time in the episode.
He's an arrogant, ambitious asshole, but like he definitely has his own kind of coat of armor. It seems to me that he does deeply care for his family.
At times it seems he cares, like this time, and then probably none of the other times.
Maybe give it, but like I said, I do kind of feel like Daemon is pretty much Targaryen Jaime Lannister.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see where he goes, but right now he does feel. I mean, I guess Jaime Lannister was a villain at the start as well, so we can see where it goes.
Right. But we do eventually get to the point where Rhaenyra does say Dracarys, and the dragon burns the graves, as is proper for a Targaryen funeral. And then, the very next scene, we jump to a small council meeting where they, which I don't know how much time has passed. I think we're supposed to assume, like, it's the same day as the funeral. Which, like,
I think so as well.
Which, like, come on, guys. At least give him, like, a week or two.
Well, I would say at least, maybe cancel the meeting for tonight, and then we can pick it back up again tomorrow. I don't know.
All right.
Same night seems alerting. And again, the hand of the, or not the hand of the king, the king's guard puts a sphere into his plate. Yeah. I'm looking at that right now, and it's bugging me now that you've pointed it
out. Who knows? Maybe in like the history and lores that comes out on the Blu-ray for this season, it'll go into detail.
Yeah, maybe so.
Or hey, maybe someone in the comments can tell us what the fuck is up with those balls.
Yeah. Why are they all pondering their orbs? I don't understand.
All right. So the matter of inheritance is brought up.
Yeah, your succession.
And so Daemon is the heir, and Otto Hightower does not like that. And he's like, "How about that daughter of yours?" And Corey's,
yeah,
and it's kind of interesting, and Hightower points this out, but Corey's is all like, we have the heir. It's Daemon Targaryen, obviously. And then Otto Hightower's just like, what about that daughter? And then Corey's just like, wait, suddenly my wife's looking like a good choice now.
Yeah, you're going a little fast for me here. But yeah, that Corey's kind of puts his foot in his mouth there. Um, so yeah, they're talking about how Damon is the heir, and they're pretty explicit about how little they trust Damon.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I mean, they almost like straight up say that they think Damon would kill Viserys.
yeah, they basically they heavily imply that they think he would assassinate his brother.
It's like, I'm not
Um,
saying that, but
yeah, it's pretty interesting how mad the king gets whenever they're all going in on him. Because yeah, like the king seems to think his brother's a stand-up guy.
I wouldn't go quite that far. I think it's just the trappings of loving your brother. I think he's
I
just
mean,
more
maybe so.
forgiving of Damien. I don't think he's like ignorant of Damon's issues. Damien's whatever. I don't think he's ignorant of the issues. I just think he's far more forgiving, and because of that familia bond, he's more trusting of Damon.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe he just because he does his basically his only justification for why he trusts his brother is he's my brother, which I would say pretty weak logic there. I don't know if that's quite enough. And then so we see Damon is spying on them, which is fucking crazy. What? How is Damon spying on them?
Yeah, I mean, there is a Kingsguard member in there, obviously, but you might think there would be some guards out on the door.
Yeah, and like not a bunch of like holes you can just peek in on the council through. I don't know. It just
Maybe there
like
are maybe there are guards there, but Damon's still just like standing there and listening, and because he's the prince, the guards are just like can't do shit.
maybe I don't know. It that bugs me. I am not a fan of Damon just getting to stand outside and listen.
All right. So, and then we have Viserys kind of blow up at the council, like, I'm not going to pick between my brother and my daughter, and fuck you all. You're trying to latch and be vultures. And I really enjoyed that. I can't say it word for word, but like he accused them all of being vultures, gnawing on the corpses of his wife and child.
Yeah,
Like, oh, that was a pretty good one. And then we get,
yeah, and it's rare to see Viserys get angry.
yeah.
You know, he's a pretty passive guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean he's not the most forceful king, but he does have that air of power. There are moments when you're like, oh shit, yeah, this guy's king.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hold on, Dad's calling me. So where were we?
So we were talking about Viserys like having a bit of a backbone. He seems a bit more lax and passive in some cases, but he still has a spine.
Yeah, yeah, and he gets angry and
Storms off.
calls out the council, which I appreciated. I liked seeing Viserys show a little sass.
Indeed, and then
And so
we get Otto Hightower being a pimp for his daughter.
yeah, this scene is a little crazy to me as well. We he just he tries to. I had a note at the start. Oh, he sends the Raven to Old Town. You got anything you want to say about him sending a Raven to Old Town?
Ooh. Does it like zoom in on the letter and say Old Town?
Well, he says to the Maester, "Send a Raven to Old Town straight away."
Ah, okay. So I guess I probably skipped that. Nothing's jumping too high in my mind. Obviously, he's probably just making sure that the news of the situation of inheritance to his family as soon as possible, so they get the message.
Mm-hmm.
Might be something deeper than
Yeah,
that.
maybe so. Maybe there's nothing to it.
Yeah, but like,
Yeah, but I got deeper feelings from it. You know.
I mean, who knows? There may be something a little bit deeper.
So yeah, and yeah, his daughter comes, and he's like, "Why don't you visit the king in his chamber?" Uh, a little sussy.
I don't know what you're talking about. Obviously, he just wants to make sure that the king is comforted, and he thinks that his daughter would be up to the task.
Yeah, yeah, he does seem to think his daughter would be up to the task. Which this scene we also get another point where she chews on her nails, and he tells her to stop it.
I mean, it's just that
Again,
it's a
I
little
don't know if
quirk.
that's ever going to be relevant, but
Quirks make
it's
interesting
come up
characters.
twice already. Quirks do make interesting characters, I suppose. Just look at My Hero Academia.
Mm. All right. But yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot more to delve into. I mean, obviously, he's trying to make it to where the king fucks his daughter, maybe even marries, so that way the high towers will have more power and influence having a queen.
Uh huh. Which I feel like Allison has like a really uh, realistic reaction to her father's proposal, where she's like, I wouldn't know what to say. Like, she's like, oh my God, that's going to be so awkward. Please don't make me do this. And her father's like, no, you're going to do it. Go put on one of your mom's dresses.
I mean, to be fair, you gotta strike while the iron's hot. And, Viserys is in a very emotional state, so any strong acts of kindness might bear better fruit than if done later.
Yeah, the iron is definitely burning hot. His wife died earlier in the day. Which I guess, did she die earlier in the day, or was the funeral just earlier in the day? We don't know how much time passed between death and funeral, I guess.
Yeah, that's probably the most difficult thing to kind of tell with this show is just in general how much time is passing one way or another.
Yeah, because the scenes are just freaking rapid fire. I mean, I don't know how many times the show just spontaneously cuts to a council meeting. Like, like they do a lot of just fucking council meeting, council meeting, council meeting. So definitely, I have no clue how much time has passed in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I how I interpreted it is that a lot of this happened like in one day.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of the impression. I mean, I don't know, because
I think
uh,
I think you can
I
stretch
almost
it.
feel like I feel like the first council meeting where they first talked about the tourney, it sounds like the tourney's not for like a day or two, kind of thing, and then we cut to the tourney, of course, and then that's where his wife dies, and then I think there might be another time skip of a day or so to the funeral, and then we cut straight from the funeral to what we're assuming is later that night. So I don't know. It feels like a few days go by during this episode, but there's some action-packed days. Like a lot of stuff has happened for sure.
But with that, we actually do get to see the scene of Alicent trying to kind of make the king feel better. And I gotta say, not super crazy about this because of her line. Like, when my mother died, nobody ever said, like, I'm sorry, or along those lines. They just spoke vaguely and whatnot. And a part of me is just like, bullshit.
Why do you think that's bullshit?
I mean, I can understand if she said, like, nobody meant it. But the idea that a very prominent noble lady would pass away and nobody would go to the daughter and say, I'm sorry for your loss, bullshit. Like, I can understand if, like, she said, like, none of it was genuine. It was just political platitudes, and maybe that's what she's meaning. And then she says, I am sorry. Where she's, like, trying to explain, like, I do mean this. It's not in a, political savvy way. Which, ironically, would make it politically savvy.
Yeah, in a weird roundabout way. She became the thing she swore to destroy. Yeah, I love how well they capture the awkwardness of this scene because she brings a book, which is kind of crazy. Like this is medieval Netflix and chill stress, I guess. Um, and then yeah, she like says it's one of my favorite books, and then she sits there, and there's just this moment of awkward silence where they're both just sitting there.
It's like, you do love the histories and lore, right? And he's like, yeah, I do.
Yeah. Yeah, and then she started talking about her mother died and how people only spoke riddles, and then she says sorry, which is what we were just talking about.
Oh God, no.
Which I think that was a good scene. Like, I think that was a really good genuine apology.
Of course,
like genuine I'm sorry.
Yeah, but now I can't help but like picture the Riddler from Batman walking up to her and doing like some fucked up shit. It's like, what's black and white and 6 feet under? Your mother.
Yeah, that would be an interesting. That would be a different show, I think, if the Riddler showed up.
All right. But now, with that, unless do you have any more particular notes for that scene?
I guess the main thing is like they leave it ambiguous. Like the scene cuts away without really anything romantic or kind of, in that vein happening. So whether she performed her father's wishes is anyone's guess. I'm kind of thinking no.
Interesting. Well, I guess there's really only one way to find out, huh?
To go read the books.
Oh, or wait for the next episode. Or the...
I guess I could wait for the next episode.
Or the season to finish. But now we get to the next part. Damon at another brothel. An orgy.
Yes.
In particular.
Yeah. Yeah, with his guards, he's... they're celebrating, but Damon doesn't really seem to be celebrating that much.
Mm-hmm.
He's just kind of chilling there. And then the prostitute he was with earlier comes up and is like, "Are you gonna give a speech, nerd?" And some dude apparently heard her and starts telling everyone to be quiet. And Damon does give a speech. And it was really stupid of him to give a speech.
Especially like
he
that,
should have
right?
sat there in the corner. Yeah.
Like, and I get it, you know.
So,
he's a prominent kind of individual, and he probably should have said something, but he could have worded it very differently.
Yeah. I mean, he was honest with them. Well, he didn't lie to anyone there.
That's the whole thing, though, was he? Because, as you said, with how he's kind of like being portrayed at that moment, he does seem like genuinely bummed that his brother's wife, that his sister-in-law, or cousin-in-law, I don't fucking know, but, his brother's wife and kid are dead. Well, yeah, but like, they're also cousins.
Right, cousin-in-law.
It's cousin, sister-in-law.
Very confusing. I think sister-in-law takes precedence there.
Okay, probably. So sister-in-law and nephew are dead. He seems genuinely bummed up. So it seems like he would say that to keep the confident air facade for his men, perhaps?
I don't know.
In which case, that seems a little crazy, because I don't think he'd lose a lot of respect if he said, like, "Man, I'm kind of bummed I lost family members."
Yeah, I think that he was sharing his genuine feelings with his speech.
Okay.
That's the impression I got.
All right. But, obviously, word gets out. And it gets to the king that Damien, in all his infinite wisdom, declared that his deceased nephew was heir for a day.
Yeah. Yeah, which, I mean, the little bit of the speech that we hear him say, also, it seems like that's kind of the direction And he's going. He's like, yeah, my nephew, the heir died, and I'm still going to be king.
Yeah.
That's kind of
I am
like the
not
start of
so
his speech.
easily replaced.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I guess I'm an idiot. The horror talking about him being replaced. She was talking about him being replaced as heir, not as king's brother. I take back all the negative things I said about that scene earlier.
Oh, that's what you were talking about. I thought you were talking
Yeah,
about heir.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess my brain was just functioning on half capacity there.
But now we make it to, I think, my favorite scene in the episode. Oh, 1 second. God bless Mario.
What was that all about?
That was my neighbor. Apparently, my faucet that I use for my water is having a leak, so he's like telling me that I need to let the landowner know so he can take care of that and all that stuff.
Ah.
Right.
Good guy, Mario.
Yeah, Mario's a pretty good guy. Okay, so where were we?
The prince was giving a speech. And
all right.
I'm an idiot for not realizing what the whore meant by he's going to be replaced.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says to the king's son, styling him, the ear for a day.
All right, and then, so once word gets out about what he said, he comes before Viserys, and
in the throne room.
Yep. And like I said, I think this is probably one of my favorite scenes, and I think it's probably because, this is where Viserys seems the most kingly and intimidating.
Oh yeah, for sure. And again, we get to see him angry,
mm-hmm.
which we don't see a lot of.
Yeah, and Damien...
Bro, I will have my Kingsguard cut out your tongue. Like, he is pissed.
Even a brother has limits. And I think...
Yeah, and they've been reached.
Yeah, and I think Viserys is holding Blackfire as he's speaking to Daemon.
Oh, is that what that sword is?
Yeah, that's a famous sword. And Daemon actually has Dark Sister, which is another Valyrian steel blade.
Uh-huh. Which the horror mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, but yeah, we get a little bit of a back and forth on it. But I feel like Viserys probably should have pushed harder in some cases. Like, I was just like, come on, man. When Daemon was like, you never once asked me to be your hand. And he's like, why would I? I'm your brother. And just like, that's it?
Yeah.
Like, that's weak sauce.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like, wah, you should have made me the hand. Wah, I'm your brother. Like, okay, bud.
Calm your tits.
Yeah. Nobody cares.
I don't know.
And then Daemon talks about how he thinks the king needs protection from the council.
Yeah.
Like, he needs someone who will have his back. And how Otto is not that person.
Yeah. To be fair, obviously, I think there is some truth to that.
Yeah, there might be some truth to that. I could see the council kind of taking advantage of the king's
situation.
Well, certainly his situation, but also just his politeness, I guess I would say.
Yeah, but to be fair, Damien has shown to be far more advantage taking, I don't know the proper term, than anyone else so far, with all the shit he gets away with.
Yeah, he definitely takes the most advantage of his brother.
Yeah. And so he gets, he pretty much, the king says...
banished to the Vale.
Yep. Then we see Viserys get cut by the Iron Throne. I don't think there's anything too deep about that. Like, I think
they're just, like, giving an example of how he got hurt on his back.
Mm-hmm. Something along
like,
those
lines.
lines.
Here, look, he can get hurt by the throne.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then we see Viserys under the skull of Balerion, just sticking his hand in fire.
Yeah, unharmed. He's He's a Targaryen.
Yeah.
They don't get hurt by fire, don't you know?
This motherfucking white-haired black elf. Anyways. Um, so when it comes to like the whole scene with him and Rhaenyra, I liked it. I think it was like overall a good. I didn't love it, but I enjoyed it. You know, there's this kind of situation where he seems to finally like kind of recollect his thoughts. And it's like obviously Daemon in his eyes can't be king, not just because Daemon's a bit of a cunt, but also because it just took this sort of moment for him to see through more of the bullshit. I don't think he was ever blind to the bullshit, but I think he thought it didn't stink as bad as it did.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of noteworthy dialogue in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
He starts by asking her, when you look at the dragon, what do you see? And she responds, us, and basically says Targaryens are only looked at as gods because of the dragons. So she's basically saying that, their influence and power is the dragons, so they're kind of one and the same.
Mm-hmm. And Viserys,
like especially Targaryen royalty,
yeah. And Viserys himself, what I'm actually like throughout this like whole episode, I'm surprised at how much I am enjoying like Viserys as a character. Because like I didn't have a strong opinion like of him going in. In fact, when my very first episode when I was ranking all the kings of Westeros, Viserys was like in the bottom 3 or 4. Like
I was gonna ask where you put him on that ranking.
yeah, but like I think there were only 3 kings that I ranked worse than him. The first was Aegon the Unworthy, because he caused the Blackfire rebellions, which resulted in 5 separate civil wars throughout like 100 years. Then there was Aerys, who was responsible for the Targaryens losing Westeros. And then I think it was Viserys, because his actions, and it wasn't entirely his fault, but because of his actions and takes, it led to the Dance of Dragons. It was like not all of the blame was put on him. It was a very precarious situation. But I definitely think this show is making me a bit more sympathetic to him, so I might have to bump him up on the list a bit.
Which I think that's probably normal. Like when you can empathize with him more, you're gonna feel bad about just judging him based on what happened while he was king.
Yeah. I mean, I guess.
And so, continue.
I was gonna say, I guess the biggest thing he could do is just like. No, never mind. That's getting a bit spoilery. We can probably talk about that in future episodes, as far as like what he could have done differently to prevent things from happening.
Mm-hmm. So then, continuing, he seems to like kind of be afraid of dragons. Like he says, their power men should never have trifled with, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like, he puts a lot of emphasis on kind of how dangerous dragons are.
Yeah. I find it a little bit odd, especially because he used to ride Balerion.
Yeah, and I think that this might be kind of the writers using him as a vessel for foreshadowing when maybe he wouldn't have actually said these things. Because, the show's called Dance with Dragons. We know, or I guess it's not called Dance with, but the book's called Dance with Dragons. So we know where things are going. So obviously dragons being dangerous is going to be kind of problematic in the near future.
Mm-hmm. So you think they're just kind of making him a bit more wiser than he probably would be?
Yeah. Like, I don't think he would necessarily say something like that, but the writers are using him for foreshadowing.
And then, as he's kind of giving this speech and having this talk with Rhaenyra, we're kind of like jumping back and forth to where he's already announced his decision to make Rhaenyra his heir over his brother, despite the ruling of the council, all those years ago that selected him.
Yeah.
And you see like some of the some of the nobility, like, go like, yeah, sure, I bend the knee, I'll serve you. But then you see some of the others who like are kind of like looking to the side and like, maybe. But they say I will, but you're like, Ed, will you though? Will you? Like that Baratheon guy, that Baratheon chud. I don't trust him.
Yeah.
I mean, granted.
Yeah, and he eventually starts talking about a prophecy, which I found kind of interesting. Am I too early jumping to the prophecy? Do you have more you want to say about?
No, 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 no. You can talk about the prophecy.
So yeah, he talks about the prophecy of the White Walkers, and I have mixed feelings about this. I understand the wanting to kind of tie the show back into Game of Thrones.
I don't.
Right. I kind of wish they didn't, but I get why they might want to do that. But like, the prophecy sounds so dumb when you know what's gonna happen.
Yep. All you
Like
you just
like,
needed
don't they
like
know that a
110
little
pound girl.
Yeah, a little girl's gonna kill the Night King, easy peasy. Like, what are you worried about? A Targaryen wasn't even necessary. Freaking idiot.
Yeah, I definitely think the prophecy was not needed. It was probably kind of just put in to have that connection to Game of Thrones, which, in all honesty, I think they need to distance themselves as much as they can from the original series.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, or at least from. I mean, I guess I would say at least from the last few seasons, but there's not really any way to. Like, the first few seasons don't really have anything to do with this show.
no, not at all. But the thing is, like, a part of me wonders if, like, because have you heard about, like, there's actually might be a spin off sequel to Game of Thrones?
I have not heard that.
It's going to be apparently a show about Jon Snow that Kit Harington and his team brought before George, and George seems interested.
And it takes place after Game of Thrones?
After Game of Thrones.
I'm so done with Jon Snow. I have no interest in Jon Snow anymore.
Yeah, the feeling is mutual on my account. But, getting off topic, I think that's pretty much it at this point, correct?
One thing I wanted to mention is freaking Damon. He's up smooching his dragon. And then is the chick that walks up to him the prostitute?
Yes.
Okay, so he takes the prostitute with him then.
Yep.
When he goes to the Vale. Okay. Yeah, that was yeah, and then he flies away, and I noted down the weird ass looking dragon, but we already kind of talked about how the dragons look different in this show. Yeah, so
that one's got
I don't know if we need to rehash it.
That one's got a long neck.
Yeah, it's long as just in general. It's a long dragon. And yeah, so that about covers the episode.
I swear to God, if this is Mario. 1 second. Jesus Christ.
He's a good guy. He's helping you out. Don't worry about it.
He's a great guy.
Don't be too hard on him.
But my God, he gives Dad a run for his money when it comes to talking.
Yeah. But, so I think that about covers the episode.
Yeah, I think does pretty good. I think we've gone into a lot. I don't think there's a whole lot we can delve into now, except for general differences between the two and whatnot. But I have a video in the workshop right now that hopefully will be done. Doesn't seem like it's going to be finished for today, so hopefully maybe tomorrow. We'll see how that plays out. But with that squared
Okay.
away,
Nice.
thank you very much, DJ Fella, for being my podcast acquaintance, companion, however word you want to do. And I look forward to talking about the rest of the series as the episodes come out.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to continue and see where the show goes.
Oh, before you go, so I'm thinking about like calling the videos and podcasts that I'll be posting Hot D Podcast, and the thumbnail will be a hot dog on fire.
Sounds good to me.
That sounds brilliant to me. All right. You be safe, man.
All right, you too. Thank you.